My name is Joe Mendoza, and I was born in Miami, Florida. Been in Orlando about 22 or 23 years now, and I'm involved in the community in a number of ways. I do live with mental illness, and I'm in a large class of men who are in their middle ages, 40 to 60, who live with mental illness, significant depression, and are just trying to cope with life. Fortunate in that I have a really supportive family and wife, and so they've been a great help in my recovery and continuing recovery. And other than that, I work as an insurance agent now, and I really like the job. But there was a long way between the worst of my times and where I am now. The first time I became aware that I was struggling was really an incident probably about 1999, where I had been working under a lot of pressure. I was a pretty successful sales manager in a large corporate environment, and one day I went to take I have this three-piece suit deal back then, and I took my stuff off the hanger, and then when I went to put the hanger back on the rack, I missed it and it fell. And then I found myself screaming at this hanger, and sort of this light bulb went on in my head and said, well, maybe I need some help here. I need to go talk to somebody. But I was a young guy, and I was like, oh, I can just work through this and work harder, work smarter, and kind of the typical thing for a baby boomer. The dialogue in my head when I was at work and really struggling was more about, I'm no longer competent at this job I excelled at. And it got to the point that I would actually, my wife was a senior manager in a firm in the HR department, so she was skilled. So I would end up calling her about what to do next on my job. I was clearly struggling. And so in about July of 2007, my marriage basically disintegrated, and I moved out and started to live on my own in an apartment. And that's not good for somebody who's suffering from all the symptoms of depression, including isolation. And on December 30th of 2007, I was sitting on my bed next to my nightstand. So I had a bunch of different prescriptions that I had started with and then gone away from and stuff. And so I looked at all these pills, and then the darkness, I don't know how to describe it anyway, but the darkness kind of really got hold of me. So I went into this process of thinking a thought and drawing the wrong conclusion. But at the time, because I was so gripped in the darkness, I thought those responses that I had thought of in my brain were totally valid. And so I looked on the nightstand, and I had somewhere around 34 pills that were all different kinds of sleep aid pills. And into my narrative in my brain starts this process of, well, if those two things are true, then yeah, I don't want to be a burden to anybody. I'm kind of done. So again, with the sinister logic that goes on, I don't know how else to explain it, this sinister logic in my head, well, I can take all these pills and I'll just go to sleep and not wake up, and they'll find me here resting peacefully in bed. And I didn't write a note, but as a courtesy, I unlocked the door to my apartment so no one would have to break in the next day. And that again is, I don't want to make light of that. That's a very, very dark place, but that's the kind of thinking that goes on in those places. Luckily, that didn't work. The next morning, I wasn't answering my phone, and I spent a lot of years in the information and telephony business, so my kids knew that I would always answer my phone. So when I wasn't, they called my estranged wife at the time, and she came over and found me passed out on the floor, called 911, and actually that's kind of the beginning of my recovery story. Much like a lot of things, when you hit your bottom, that's when you start to move into some level of recovery. So one of the things that's been very helpful in my recovery is a meditation practice. And what meditation does is it allows me or anybody really, to think about how they're going to react to something. The old saying goes, it's not what happens to us, it's how we react to it that counts, right? So if you practice enough meditation, your mind becomes skillful enough to find the moment in between whatever the thing that happens to you is and your reaction. And so you become consciously aware that you have a choice in the middle of what's going on. There's a lot of people who know my story already in Orlando, but this is my story, and I really tell my story so that other people can find hope.